All right, let's go ahead and get started. So you're all here today to learn about EngagedMD's newest product, Navigate. Maybe you're a longtime user of EngagedMD for our Learn and our Sign services. And we've really become standard of care when it comes to informed consent for fertility. And behind the scenes over the last couple of years, we've been hard at work on what's coming next for EngagedMD. And we're really excited to dig in and show you all Navigate, our newest product today that is designed to help patients progress through their treatment journey more quickly and even more smoothly and seamlessly, and also help you make your day-to-day processes easier and convert more patients to treatment. So here's where we're headed. We'll share a little bit about how we decided to come up with this new product and the research behind it. We'll show you all Navigate and how it works. And then we'll also share some details from the pilot sites who have already been using Navigate for the past months and the successes that they're seeing. And then, like I promised, some time at the end for Q&A. So if you don't know me, I'm Stephanie DiGianni. I lead the fertility business at EngagedMD. I have been with EngagedMD for 6 years now, and I have the distinct pleasure of working with many of you who are our partners and our customers in supporting you in your use of EngagedMD. And I'm just here to moderate and enjoy all the fun with you today. And I'm joined by Jeff Issner and Alec Smidt, who are really going to be sharing the key insights. So Jeff, I'll let you introduce yourself first.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. So glad to be here today. My name's Jeff Issner. I'm one of the co-founders and co-CEO of EngagedMD, and I clearly need a new headshot because I look like I'm about 15 in this one. Um, Excited to share a little bit about what we're up to. My favorite part about my role is and for the past 10 years, I've had the pleasure of working side by side with clinics and speaking with nurses, doctors, CEOs, front desk associates to really learn about what works in clinics today and what doesn't work in clinics today. So hopefully we'll solve some of those problems. And again, excited to share more. Alec,
And
over to you.
you look just as young today as this headshot, Jeff, for what it's worth.
Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Alec Smidt. I'm EngagedMD Solutions Architect. I've been with EngagedMD coming up on 2 years, and as Stephanie mentioned, lots of exciting things have happened in that time. By way of kind of introduction and background, I worked as a psychologist in a former life in a different area of healthcare, certainly, and one of the sort of most exciting parts of my job is to work in this different area of healthcare and making everyone's life easier, from clinic staff to patients, on what can be a complex, rewarding, and everything in between journey. So looking forward to speaking with you all today. Thank you.
Thanks, Alec. Thanks, Jeff. I'll turn it back to you, Jeff, to tell us how we got to where we are today.
Amazing. It's hard to believe that when we started on this Engaged MD journey more than 10 years ago now, and we had a relatively simple mission. We wanted to reimagine the way that patient education and informed consent was performed. And we did a pretty good job at it. So we've had the benefit and the pleasure of having a lot of third parties study our tool over the years, and we've proved that our learn and sign tools can improve patient knowledge, improve patient satisfaction, and ultimately their comfort pursuing fertility treatment. And over the years, we've really been intentional about how we expanded our solutions to support patients through every stage of their journey, not just consenting to IVF like where we started. So we've built out products that help support patients from before they even come to their first appointment, all the way through they're at the end of their journey and are deciding what to do if they have any extra specimens that are frozen. And I'm really proud of this stat. In the 10 years that we've been in business now, more than two in every three patients who pursue fertility treatment in North America and the United Kingdom are interacting with EngagedMD and our learn and sign tools in one way or another. But as I mentioned in my introduction, this is just how we got to the point that we're at. I get to spend so much of my day talking to care teams and patients alike. And there are still plenty of problems to be solved. This is our patient. And your typical patient, when pursuing fertility treatment, is just drinking from the fire hose of information. There is so much to comprehend, there's so much to do, from understanding where to show up and what documents they need to fill out and what tests they need to perform and how to start treatment and how to get financial clearance. And it is just incredibly overwhelming for patients, especially during that onboarding and that diagnostic phase. And we hear this over and over and over again. We're trying to give patients all of the information they need, but it is just so much and it is so overwhelming in terms of where to start. And we want to get some audience interaction here, so I'm going to pass it back over to Steph for our first poll question.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and launch a poll for everyone. So you should see a pop-up on your screen any moment now. And we want to hear from you, particularly if you work in a clinic with patients or if you work with clinics who work with patients and you've heard secondhand from them. What are the top 3 parts of the patient onboarding or workup process that patients struggle to complete and might need some extra hand holding through? So go ahead and pick your top 3 from this list. If you end up selecting other, drop us a line in the chat to let us know what those other things are. And we'll give you guys a couple minutes to complete this. But Jeff, everything you were saying so far really resonates with me. I have worked in this field for a decade now, and a couple of years ago, I froze my eggs and I thought, oh, this will be a breeze. I already know all about this. And I was shocked to go through it as a patient and see how disjointed the journey was, even at, working in the field, choosing what I thought was the very best fertility clinic. And it was so overwhelming to have so many things thrown at you at once and be handed this long, it wasn't just a checklist, it was a long, like multi-page PDF document of here's everything you have to go do and go ask a bunch of different pharmacies for quotes on your meds. And I was really taken aback by how overwhelming it felt, even as someone who came in feeling like I knew a lot.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Steph. I'm watching these results come in, and it's a nice array of answers. We're seeing a lot of getting the partner to do a semen analysis, getting the partner to do genetic carrier screening, just getting all of those medical records ported over.
Seems like we've got some good answers in here. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share results with folks so you can see this too. But yeah, a lot of different places where you all are chasing patients, requesting medical records, getting the partner to do things. I feel like that's what we hear time and time again is like, good luck if you need the partner to do something. But there's also some really cool companies out there trying to support this. And we've seen a lot of early successes with Navigate here as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Let me close out this poll. So we hear from patients, they're drinking from the fire hose. This is our staff member, our average nurse or PCC. And it's the same thing on the other side. There's so much to keep track of. And all of us in the field are trying to help more patients access care, convert to care. And it's largely on our nurses and PCCs and administrative staff to make sure that patients are doing the right things. They're staying on top of their checklists. They're completing the tasks that they need to in order to get to that next phase of moving forward and actually starting treatment. And so patients, care teams, they've got one thing in common for sure. They're overwhelmed and they have to keep track of a ton of information. So the great divide, what do we do to try and solve this divide of communicating what needs to happen, what has to happen next, and what has already been completed? We start with the gold standard, the patient checklist. And sometimes this lives in an EMR, sometimes it's just printed out, sometimes it's emailed, but it is static and there's a lot of information to follow. So we try and fill in those gaps with handouts and handouts and handouts and handouts and handouts and a ton of paper. And inevitably, we're calling each other back and forth. So Care teams are calling patients to share with them the next steps or to check in on progress. Patients are calling their care teams to get that same information. We've got emails, portal messages, sometimes snail mail. And inevitably, patients are going online and trying to get answers to fill in the gaps that they don't have, whether that's forums or Dr. Google or ChatGPT, just trying to get all of the answers that they can so that they can feel like they're making progress. And on the care team side, our care teams are keeping track of what to do next with sticky notes and spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are great because they're really flexible and you can capture information, but they're on the side of desk and every single staff member can have a different version of it. Trying to figure out where patients are getting lost or any trends across a clinic is pretty much impossible. And so that's how we got to where we are today. We did a lot of research. We aggregated all of our knowledge from the customer calls and interactions that we've had over the years, along with some very dedicated market research on this specific topic to create Navigate. And so I'll stop one more time before we jump in and introduce the product for our next poll question. Steph?
Thanks, Jeff. I'll go ahead and launch this next poll here. You shared with us where patients are struggling the most. Now we want to hear what you do when patients are struggling to help them move forward and make sure they complete the next steps to move forward in their journey. So again, we've got a few options here. Let us know which of these you're doing in practice. And if you have something that's not on this list, drop it in the chat for us too. It was crazy. I was talking to a practice today, and they were saying they're still using snail mail to mail physical materials out to patients. And that was the first I had heard that in a while. Jeff, I know you were chatting with one of our pilot clinics a few months back about genetic carrier screening and how that slows the process for them as well.
Yeah, you know the Spider-Man meme where everybody's pointing at each other. It was like that brought to life. We were going through their workflows and trying to understand where in the process patients were falling off or getting lost. And carrier screening came up as an issue where they were finding out at the last minute that patients weren't properly informed and wanted to move forward with carrier screening. And as everyone in this call likely knows, it takes some time to get those tests done and to get the results shared and to meet with the genetic counselor if needed. And so we had the whole care team. We had a PCC, a nurse, and a doctor at the table. And the PCC and nurse were sharing, yeah, I don't really talk about carrier screening because it's so complex and, I'm not properly trained on genetics and it just causes more issues when I start to address it. So I leave that to the doctor. And the doctor kind of looked at them scared, like, I don't talk about that because it always makes my appointments run long and people are in the waiting room. So the bottom line is no one was talking about it. And that was a major reason why genetic carrier screening was coming up at the last minute and causing delays in treatment.
And we're seeing that. I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results with folks so you can see what we're seeing too. But we're seeing a lot of people using phone calls, portal messages, sending PDFs, EMR task lists, some managing in spreadsheets. So it seems like across the board, there's still a lot of different ways that people are getting in touch with patients to make sure they're supported in moving forward.
Okay. Well, I am thrilled to talk through EngagedMD Navigate. As we've alluded to, this is our newest product line that we've been working on for a long time at EngagedMD. It was built to work seamlessly with the products that you already know and love from our company, Learn and Sign on the EngagedMD platform. And what is Navigate? Navigate is digital care navigation, and we built this with a few goals in mind. We want to make our care teams more efficient and reduce the burnout that we know everybody's feeling trying to support more and more patients in less time. We want to make patients feel more engaged, more accountable with what they need to do so that they stay on track with their care plan. And ultimately, we want to improve access, so have more patients stick with their plan and convert to treatment and not fall through the cracks or go to another clinic to try and get care. So how does this work? We start with new flexible task types that we've been building, And these task types are building blocks for what I'll show next, but they're very configurable, very customizable. And there's a few types. So I'll start with actions. Actions are a very simple way to make sure patients know exactly what they need to do and to allow patients to share back to their care team that they've completed what they need to do. So this could be as simple as call your OB-GYN and send over your medical records, upload them here. It could be go to LabCorp and get a blood draw and just let us know when it's done. The next task type here is questionnaires. So questionnaires are meant to capture information from patients. So for example, you might want to ask patients, are you interested in pursuing a clinical trial? Yes or no? Or upload your medical history, fill out your medical questionnaire and your insurance and identification information. We then have medications, which are meant to take stim sheet information and share it directly with patients, alongside with how to actually use those medications. We've got a lot of great medication training content in our partnership with S&P Pharmacy called MedReady, and we want to bring all of that together so patients have it in one place. And similarly, patients need to know where they need to be and when, so we have appointment task types. We also have our learn and sign task types, which allows us to integrate our learn and sign product lines seamlessly into Navigate. And as I said, these are building blocks. So you can take these building blocks and compose them into templates that we're calling mutual action plans or MAPs. And these mutual action plans are meant to reflect your workflows. So again, you can configure as many of these as you need to match all of the different stages and patient types that are flowing through your clinic. Few examples of these and then how this works next. So we can take these mutual action plans that you've templatized on EngagedMD, and they can be really easily assigned either manually with a couple of clicks or through our API so that you can standardize your clinic workflows at scale. And so, as a few examples, you might have one for new patient onboarding. You might have one for diagnostic testing. You may have one for all the different treatment types as you're moving forward through all the different stages of treatment. So IVF, IUI, donors, donor recipients, etc. And again, these can be really simply assigned so that patients have access to exactly what they need to do next. So I'm moving over to what a patient might see. So of course, this is all mobile, tablet, desktop friendly. Patients can access their action plans really easily with a couple of clicks and see every task that they need to complete next. Everything is fully actionable within the platform. And our goal here is that we give patients the tools that they need to stay engaged, accountable, and on track. So a really simple example, and again, I just put together some building blocks here to make up a diagnostic testing flow. Yours will likely look very different, and it's super easy to customize and configure these. So this patient, Emmy, would learn about diagnostic testing, set expectations about what's to come. She'd answer a questionnaire on if she would like to move forward or decline carrier screening. Based on those results, we'd unlock the right consent or waiver. And then Emmy knows on day one by clicking on this action what it means to call in on the first day of her period and why she needs to do that and who she needs to call. On the clinic side, so shifting over to what clinics would see with Navigate, you have real-time visibility into exactly how patients are progressing through each one of those steps. So what you see here is a sample of what the dashboard could look like for a staff member. You've got a view into every patient and where they are, what stage they're in, as well as any tests that you need to perform as a staff member. So this allows you to not have to call, chase down, portal message, carrier pigeon, whatever it might be, to get those answers back from patients. You can see exactly where they are in real time. And this is where I really geek out about the platform. So everything that patients and staff members are doing within this platform, we're creating a robust data set of analytics that can help us understand where our mutual action plans are working and where we've got friction points. So As patients progress through the different stages and through their different mutual action plans, you can see exactly where patients get stuck, where they're getting caught up in a specific stage, and use that information to modify and iterate upon your mutual action plans to continuously improve. So our motto at EngagedMD is to iterate, iterate, iterate. And we want you to be able to do the same thing with your workflows at the clinic and your pathways for patients. And by finally having all of this data in one place about how patients progress through, you can use that set to really create the idealized patient journey. All right, Steph, back over to you.
Yeah, we're on our last poll, believe it or not. So I'll go ahead and launch this for you, but we want to know how much visibility you have today into where patient drop-off happens and what's holding them back from moving forwards. It was really surprising to me when we first started talking to clinics about this and asking for some of their data, how hard it was to get that data. And I think that one of the really cool things about Navigate is we can surface this drop-off data or concerns about patients getting stuck, both at the individual level, where you can intervene individually, and in aggregate, like you were showing, Jeff. The other thing that's come up that we've heard is a lot of times there will be people in more business-oriented roles within a practice or, leadership team within a large network who they have visibility into this data. But then at the individual clinic level, there's a lot less visibility. So that was pretty interesting to me too.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that everybody is able to see this data as it relates to their job and how they can be better so that ultimately patients are getting the best experience. And again, I think we all have this shared goal of getting the right patient to the right treatment as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Got a mix of responses in here. I'll go ahead and end it and share results. But people are really kind of same places we've heard from clinics so far. A couple people said they have minimal data. Some said they have some data, but it's possible to pull, but a hassle. And one of our big goals here is to increase that transparency, like Jeff said, to really support you in iterating and consistently improving your processes to improve the ultimate results and outcomes for you and your patients.
Awesome. My last bit here before I hand it off to Alec, I just wanted to share a little bit more of the why behind the what and some of the real life results that we've seen by applying mutual action plans in practice within a clinical setting. So this first example is actually from our friends at the University of Cincinnati that did a study on genetic carrier screening using EngagedMD. We had two arms, one using EngagedMD with education and the ability to make a decision on whether they want to move forward or not right away. So really tying that education directly to action. The control arm was your traditional in-office counseling, which I think, as we all know, genetic carrier screening is one of a million things that we have to convey to patients in those first appointments. We compared the patient uptake of genetic carrier screening between those two cohorts, and the goal, of course, is to have more patients deciding to pursue carrier screening. The results were astounding, way more than I had expected. Almost double the number of patients in the engaged MD arm decided to pursue carrier screening in comparison to the in-office counseling arm, so about 79% to 42% respectively. And what makes this even better in my mind is that providers rated that EngagedMD use significantly decreased demand on appointment time. So not only are we getting the results that we want, but we're able to save time and do it more effectively along the way. The next example of mutual action plans in practice is with our friends at Path Fertility, who were running a clinical trial on their sperm QT test. And before we implemented an EngagedMD mutual action plan, which consisted of education about the study itself, the ability to say, yes, I'm interested or no, I'm not. And then those results would go directly to a clinical trial coordinator at the practice to follow up upon. The first 10 months pre-engaged MD, Path Fertility was able to recruit about 112 participants. We created the workflows at a few big networks, and the mutual action plans resulted in a 230% increase in recruitment in about half the time, just 5.5 months. So again, we have a desired outcome. We create a seamless, clear, concise action plan for patients to follow, and the results just started to flow in. And then the last example that I'll share is how we've used our Fertility 101 module, which is educational content about what to expect as you're getting ready to pursue your journey. We had a large North American network implement this before their new patient visit, and we saw a significant increase in patients showing up to that NPV if they watched the Fertility 101 module. So 64 versus 49% of patients showed up for their NPV if they watched the Fertility 101 module versus not watching Fertility 101 module. So a few examples here, and hopefully your imaginations are starting to turn about all of the different ways that we can create different mutual action plans to take our manual workflows, digitize them, and get some really great results. I will see everybody at the Q&A. Over to Alec to share a little bit more about what we've seen at our pilot sites with Navigate.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Before diving into a couple of case examples, I want to first dive in a little bit deeper into some of that, what that kind of research and pain points that we've heard directly from staff and patients are. So as Jeff and Stephanie mentioned, we did a lot of research over the last several years. We talked to patients and partners and all kinds of staff members, from administrators who work the front desk to medical assistants, patient care coordinators, nurses, providers, everyone really in between. And so this is just kind of one slice of what we heard insofar as some themes. From the staff perspective, we heard, unsurprisingly, that patients are quite overwhelmed at onboarding, sort of at the start of their journey. They don't know where to start. And again, unsurprisingly, engagement and conversion suffer. We know that staff spend hours and hours sort of hunting and gathering and tracking down whether or not patients have completed labs, screening, semen analysis, genetic carrier screening, anything. It takes a lot of effort to kind of do that sort of investigative work. And this makes sense that it's taking a lot of time because a lot of what kind of the state of the art is for clinic staff is giving, paper PDF instructions or kind of, a combination of things. That graphic Jeff showed earlier was really powerful. Combination of PDFs, portal messages, snail mail, everything that's easily misplaced, especially the sort of paper and the PDFs, which cost staff time in terms of re-explaining or having to resend materials. And then all of these results in a really difficult time having visibility. You can't see the progress someone is making with on a PDF or a paper checklist when that's at the home of your patient and you're sitting in your clinic office. So from the staff side, we know that we have a few things here and many others to address. On the patient side, because instructions and checklists and to-dos are scattered across these different areas, it's really hard to follow. It's hard to follow. I'm, for myself and for all of us, going through any kind of healthcare experience. And in particular for our fertility patients, we know that there's a lot of anxiety when delays in completing what they need to do pushes back their treatment. Again, understandably, this is a very sort of wanted and highly desired process, and they want to get into treatment as soon as possible. And any delays are really difficult. I want to now kind of talk about two case examples that come directly from our pilot sites. The first is around genetic carrier screening, and I'll go through the challenge and sort of how this particular pilot site was experiencing this challenge, the approach that we implemented with Navigate, and ultimately what some of the goals are in implementing this approach. As I'm kind of going through this example, it would be great to hear from this group in the chat. How has the pain point of genetic carrier screening kind of shown up for you? It sounds like just from the earlier poll question, that's definitely shown up for a few folks. Would love some more detail in the chat as I'm going through this. So our challenge, carrier screening was frequently delayed and is frequently delayed at this particular pilot site. Patients are unsure how and when to complete it, and staff are, as we said, chasing down results. And a little bit more sort of color and context is that this particular site was using a carrier screening provider that required tandem testing. So patients and their partners need to complete testing within a certain amount of time, and this was about 7 days. So there wasn't a lot of time really for kind of things to sort of go wrong. There was a sort of a slim margin for error. So what ended up happening a lot is that primary patients get their carrier screening blood work drawn, and their samples end up being held for several days, and potentially even needing to repeat them because the partners are not getting their part of the screening done, or the primary patients themselves are delayed. So there's just a lot going on with this one kind of slice of the workup process. Our approach with Navigate is that instead of kind of a menagerie of communication methods and ways of delivering this particular item, patients received a really clear action plan of next steps. With action tasks guiding them. And those are, again, one of these new features of Navigate, an action task, guiding them to complete carrier screening to keep moving forward in treatment. So what they have to do, when they have to do it, which lab, whether it's in-house or external, and any details that the patient and partner need. The goal here is that by surfacing carrier screening steps earlier in the process, we have fewer back and forth calls from staff to track progress, because this is all on the EngagedMD platform. Staff assign these action tasks, patients receive them, they open them, they mark them as complete, and that's immediately visible to staff members. And as a consequence, patients arrive at their visits with key testing already complete, reducing any of the bottlenecks, or sharply reducing the bottlenecks that happen. I'm going to keep going on. Feel free to, again, any insights, any context from your own experiences, please do drop them in the chat. This next case example, we're really focusing on the broader kind of diagnostic testing or workup phase, which has a lot in it. And unsurprisingly, the challenge here is at this particular pilot site is that the workup is really leading to bottlenecks. So not just that it was leading to bottlenecks, but staff had very little kind of visibility. There was no like air traffic control tower that they could sit in, kind of seeing where their patients were on an individual basis, but also the population of their patients. That was really difficult to get some insight. So you have staff that, from what we've seen in the poll questions and from what Jeff and Stephanie have mentioned throughout, you have a combination of spreadsheets, you have sticky notes, you have portal messages that you then have to mark off on your spreadsheet, et cetera. So our approach with Navigate is that, like I discussed with the case example from genetic carrier screening, patients receive very clear action items from their very first phone call. And this is sort of a staged approach. Like learning anything, you start small and increase in complexity. So from the first phone call, patients start with administrative tasks such as setting up their portal or completing any intake paperwork or medical history, then starting with kind of some basics of a workup. So some basic blood work and ultrasound, starting with carrier screening, completing a semen analysis, also a pain point that some folks with one of the poll responses called out, and then moving on to, for example, a uterine evaluation, infectious disease screening, et cetera. And not only is are those tasks delivered? Are those clear action steps delivered to the patients directly through EngagedMD? But this is also, the expectation is set from the very first phone call that this is going to be how we're managing your care and why it's so important. And in addition to that, we have a way for staff to not only look at their patients kind of individually, but from kind of the 50,000-foot view of being able to say, okay, where is this patient and their partner at across each phase of treatment? And zooming out even further, where are all of the patients that I'm responsible for? And for folks who are administrators or in a leadership position, where are we at across our entire patient population? How are folks moving through the process from, for example, intake to diagnostics and workup through active treatment and beyond? And the goal ultimately is that staff get this visibility. So from an individual level, they can intervene earlier for patients who might need a little bit more attention. So we can make sure that there are no delays. Two is that the workup and the diagnostic tasks are sequenced and assigned in one place rather than, again, this combination of communication methods and pieces of paper and more. And then lastly, patients have more clarity and feel more prepared to move into treatment. So they come with very specific ideas of what to ask and what's expected of them to keep moving forward, so that they understand what's needed to move on to not only the next phase of treatment, but the next follow-up visit, for example. I want to end before Q&A by highlighting a couple of takeaways here. So Navigate, quite simply, revolutionizes how staff and patient, the experience they have throughout their care journey by first centralizing all of patients' instructions and expectations in one place. Two, giving staff visibility into patient progress and reducing that manual follow-up and rework. This really also creates smoother handoffs that keep patients moving forward from intake to their workup towards starting active treatment and beyond. All of this together is with at least three goals. The first of which is to increase patient conversion to treatment, to improve care team efficiency and reduce the burnout, to make things easier on staff and make them less burned out and more time to not just breathe, but to do the kind of work that they want to do, which is working with patients. And then lastly, improve patient engagement and task accountability. Patients know what they need to do, are more engaged in their care, and have a smoother journey. At this point, I will turn it back over to Steph. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to the Q&A.
Thanks, Alec, and thanks, Jeff. That was really excellent. And it's been really rewarding over the past 6 years that I've been at EngagedMD to see how much impact our Learn and Sign services have had on clinics and their patients. And even just in the last 6 months, seeing the impact that we're having with Navigate has been equally rewarding. So really, really cool and excited to get this into more folks' hands. At this point, we'll go ahead and move into our Q&A. If you have any questions, go ahead and use that Q&A button. It's a little different from the chat. Use the Q&A button on your screen. It's got a little question mark icon, and submit your questions in here. We had one from Dr. Charles earlier in the presentation. Jeff, when you were talking about the data that we got from one of the large North American networks on cancellation rates and no-show data, Dr. Charles was surprised by the no-show rate there. Do you want to speak to that a little bit further?
Yeah, of course, confidentiality is critical, and we see not only a lot of people not showing up after that initial interest, but also the drop off from the new patient visit to actually pursuing with their diagnostic testing. So we've seen pretty consistently, 30% to 50% of patients who are actually moving forward with care after that initial inquiry. And that's something that we think we can support patients in the right way who aren't ready for care, as well as supporting patients in the right way that are ready for care.
Yeah, and it's really every practice that we work with is trying to optimize different parts of their workflow, right? And like everyone's working on something different. This network was working on this, and that's one of the reasons we're studying it with them, which is really interesting. And yeah, Dr. Chalice, that was prior to the first visit. That was no shows to the new patient visit. We've got some other questions coming in here. One is, do you offer a calendar for patients to follow during each step of the fertility treatment cycle? Jeff, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. We are taking this, the mutual action plans are all tied to dates. So all the tasks have dates that people need to complete things by. And then you start to bring in the medications during each step of the fertility treatment cycle and the appointments. And naturally, that lends itself well to a calendar. While the view isn't currently in a calendar view, that is something that we're planning on introducing going forward, but all of the steps are showing up so that patients have the right information at the right time, right at their fingertips.
We've also got some questions about what's coming next with Navigate. So, Alec, would you like to speak to what other enhancements are coming to Navigate soon?
Sure, we have many things on the cards. I'd say, Jeff. Yeah, I know we've been working hard on Navigate up to this point, and then going forward, it's our top focus. So some of the things that Jeff mentioned earlier are what we're hard at work on. So, for example, working on messaging and some of those other core features of our platform. One of the key parts of is what I think we've talked about, or you maybe heard this word multiple times, is the idea of visibility. So anything that we can do to make um, sort of patient progress much more visible between staff and patient, we're doing that. So in terms of how do we make that much more sort of easy and straightforward for staff to see how are patients making progress on their action items? How can staff members and sort of the administrators view their entire patient population? And sort of and so on. That's really again a top focus, is bringing some more visibility, because that allows everyone to take action in a more timely way and prevent problems even from developing.
Yeah,
Thanks,
another
Alec.
thing that sticks out that we're working on currently is more automation. So
Mm.
just removing as
Mhm.
many clicks as we can, removing as many things that people need to remember to do. So for example, taking appointment feeds and automating what gets assigned based on the appointment type, or improving our EMR integrations to automate how we write back to EMRs. So a lot that we're working on simultaneously, all based on user feedback about what will make their lives easier.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Alec. We're getting a lot of questions in around how do clinics activate Navigate? Is there an additional cost to use this? So I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat. This is where you can go to connect with our sales team. So Navigate is a separate product from Learn and Sign, but it works really well with Learn and Sign. So there is a separate cost for it. But we would recommend a good first step being connecting with a member of our team, and we'll do a free workflow analysis for you where we'll aim to understand how you're approaching these challenges in your clinic today and what impact we could have with Navigate. And then we'll do a custom demo for you too, so you can actually see the platform live and how it would look for you. And we can walk through costs in that setting as well. Few more questions coming in. With pilot clinics, do we have stats on percent of patients that converted to treatment sooner using Navigate? And this is really the ultimate goal here. Alec, do you want to speak to that, or do you want me to pass it to Jeff?
Go ahead, Jeff. If you want to start, I'll round it out.
Sure. So this is definitely the our North Star. How do we help more patients access treatment faster? Um, we do not have hard data on this yet, but we have a lot of anecdotal data that we are continuing to accumulate and build up more and more on the ROI of this product beyond just patients like it and clinics like it. So, um, no hard numbers to share with you yet, but our pilot sites, as Alec mentioned, are sharing that patients are showing up more prepared. They're able to spend less time with patients while still having a better experience. So all of the signs are pointing in the right direction, and we're excited. As we've learned over the years, it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of third parties to do proper RCTs, IRB approved studies. We can't wait to do that with Navigate, but we don't want to share any fake data before it's ready.
Well said. Alec, anything you wanted to add there?
+1, +100. Couldn't have said it better.
Excellent. Next question on the list here is, Jeff, you spoke a little bit to automation. Alec, you touched on that too. How does Navigate work alongside a clinic's existing EMR, and are there integration or automation capabilities?
Yeah, I'm happy to start on this one. So, fortunately, we already have relationships with the majority of EMRs in the fertility space, and the integration that exists for EngagedMD today in terms of having a single sign-on, having your demographics flow automatically, things like that will still exist for Navigate. Um, we are working to continue to improve those integrations so that we can find more ways to automate things and less clicks and less things to remember, as I mentioned earlier. What the majority of our pilot sites are doing, though, is still manual, and they're still seeing a ton of value out of that because it's just a few extra clicks to get a ton of time savings, efficiency, satisfaction, etc., from our Navigate product. So all that to say, we're getting started. We're starting to work with our EMR partners to improve the integrations even further. But what exists today will apply with Navigate as well.
We've
I would
got
say to
one more follow-up on that, which is specifically, do we integrate with EIVF now? And I'm happy to answer that piece of it. We do have a foundational integration with EIVF that covers all the basics of like getting patient demographic information in, sending some information back, and we'll be enhancing that as we roll out Navigate to more and more EIVF users. Alec, you were going to add something as well.
Just to add to what Jeff said, yes, I think, right now we're working in parallel, sort of on top of how the EMRs exist right now. I think, as Jeff said, we're seeing a huge amount of value working in that way. And I think what we've also seen is a lot of EMRs just don't offer this kind of sort of patient engagement and sort of patient journey management. And that's part of what we're seeing as a gap, certainly in our research, but also in the existing landscape. We see a huge opportunity because EMRs don't offer this kind of capability to fill that gap, and we've been doing so with our pilot sites.
Absolutely agree. I think we've answered all the questions that have come in. Thank you all for adding these. One last reminder, I added a link in the chat for everyone. We'll send this out via email to everyone who is here as well. But if you are interested in learning more about how Navigate might work at your clinic specifically, you can use that link to request a quick free chat with a member of our team, and we're happy to dig in a layer deeper with you. But I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We're really excited about this next chapter for EngagedMD and the impact it will have on all of you and your patients. And I also want to thank Jeff and Alec, our fearless leaders today. Excellent